lot of y'all have been telling me to try out Aventurine in Gold and Gears, as well as Swarm Disaster, and while I knew he was going to be incredible in the format, I just haven't quite gotten the time to try it out, but I finally did, and my gosh, I think we have the new strongest character in Swarm Disaster, Golden Gears, and Simulated Universe as a whole. I think before this you could have made the argument that Kafka, Black Swan were potentially the most broken characters for Golden Gears, Conundrum, Swarm Disaster, Simulated Universe, you get the picture, because them on the Nihility path was absolutely busted. It looked like a fireworks show with all those DOTs going off, but you still needed survivability, so we always looked at characters like Gepard and Fushuan, and characters like Gepard are absolutely busted in Simulated Universe, in Swarm Disaster, in Conundrum, Golden Gears moments, because those shields are just so strong. In fact, you don't even need anybody from the DOTs. You don't need Kafka Black Swan. You could have just leaned into the preservation path, lean into those super duper broken shields, and let the quake damage do all of the work. And now, with somebody like Aventurine in the game, he's an even better shield character than Gepard. Then he has damage of his own on top of all of this. Now, it is more easy to clear with Aventurine than probably any other character before this, because their survivability is absolutely nuts, making you completely safe, and then you just lean into the quake damage or any other effects such as elation or anything else you could possibly do for the damage, and that means there are so many potential teams that you could use along with Aventurine to get the job done. There's obviously a lot of fun ways you can get the clear in late Conundrums in Golden Gears, and a lot of those ways are kinda cheesy, to be honest, with the Remembrance Path freezes, the Abundance Path healing, and, revives. You could also use preservation with quake damage, etc., etc. But you don't even really need to cheese the game with this dude, because his shielding is so reliable. As long as you have enough follow-up synergy with him, he alone with his own kit, not even using blessings, can just restack the shields over and over and over again. And as long as you have enough preservation blessings, those shields are gonna be super duper OP, oh my gosh. And if you're paying attention to the shield and it starts to get a little bit low or even halfway, you can just use his skill every once in a while in order to stack up those shields yet more, making it an incredibly skill point efficient synergy. And that means you can actually lean into a lot of fun blessings in order to get some damage off. And it doesn't mean that you have to sit there just kind of like stacking shields over and over and over again and making it a not so fun way of getting the clear. Let's be honest, some of those cheesy strategies were not all that fun. But in this case, with Aventurine, it's brain dead. It's absolutely the easiest way to clear, in my personal opinion, since these endgame modes started. And you can make fun builds out of it. You're not necessarily held back by your cheesy strategy. It's super duper fun, super duper easy, and I think Aventurine is the new best character for Golden Gears, Simulated Universe, and Swarm Disaster, and I don't think it's even close. I, for example, decided to try out a fun synergy with Clara and Aventurine, because I feel like some folks kind of forgot that this was a really good synergy with the guy. Yeah, sure, everyone's talking about Ratio, everyone's talking about Topaz, everyone's talking about Acheron and stuff like that, but Clara is an incredibly underrated follow-up character, and that means she's going to be absolutely busted with Aventurine, and it's super duper reliable. You basically have to just get hit, and the job is done for you. You can just sit back, let all these follow-ups do their own thing. It's super duper easy. You barely have to do anything. As long as you have like 2 brain cells that you could rub together to make like a cohesive thought every once in a while and just push a couple of buttons along the way, it basically does everything for you. You could practically just run this on auto and it does all the work for you. I don't recommend you literally run auto in every single fight in this circumstance, because let's be honest, the AI just kind of screws up sometimes. I mean, Jesus Christ, how long is it gonna be before the devs figure out that Ting Yun's AI is totally broken? Why are they trying to put her ultimate on support characters? This is not a good choice. Why haven't they fixed this? It's been a year. Anyways, rant over. I guess since we're here, I'll go over what team I decided to go with when I was testing this out. I went with Clara, Aventurine, Ting Yun and Ron Mei, because this is just incredibly reliable. Ron Mei is so broken in Simulated Universe, Swarm Disaster, and Golden Gears. When you walk into the final boss, or any true boss fight that has waves, she basically deals like half of the entire first wave's damage just on her own personal abilities. Ron Mei is absolutely cracked in these formats, and if you happen to break one of the enemies, they are down, and they're taking a ton of damage, and they can't hurt you because they're weakness broken. And then she delays the weakness break. You don't need me to tell you how strong Ron Mei is, and it's also skill point efficient, allowing you to be able to do all sorts of fun stuff, allowing you the wiggle room that you want in combat. Ting Yun basically does the same thing, but Ting Yun is so good on this team, not only because of the buffs, not only because she's so skill point efficient, but because she provides that extra energy that she could give to literally anyone on the team. And that's going to be really broken on a character like Clara, who has a really low energy cost. The second that Clara's buffs from her ultimate run out, you can basically immediately ult again with a character like Ting Yun on the team. And she's gonna be dealing a lot of damage, Clara I mean, so you're gonna be defeating a ton of enemies. Her AoE skill is also really powerful, so if you can get blessings that lean into her AoE skill, she's going to have a very powerful skill because she's going to be putting marks of counter on enemies regularly, and she's going to be able to detonate that with that AoE. And her counter is obviously the most important thing, so you should definitely lean into Elation Path with that, because not only does Clara have follow-up synergy, she also has synergy with Aventurine, stacking up those shields with his talent. And Aventurine has his own follow-up as well. So all of a sudden, Aventurine turns into a DPS on this team. Even if you built him for sub-DPS functionality and survivability, he turns into a DPS regardless, because this mode is just so broken with him on it. The other fun thing about Ting Yun in this comp is that it is so skill point efficient, you can basically spam her skill if you felt so inclined, allowing her to get that ultimate up even faster. And you don't have to only buff Clara with that ult. Something that some people don't think about is that Ting Yun's ultimate buff is not restricted to one character. So you could buff Clara, then get the ult up again, and because Clara is so slow, you could potentially keep that buff on her for a significant amount of time, and then you could switch to buffing Aventurine as well, because Aventurine deals so much damage in this mode with these builds that you could potentially use him with. It's actually very viable to buff Aventurine depending on the situation, especially if you know his ult is coming up, especially if you know his follow-up is coming up. You have all sorts of different options. You have this team is incredibly strong. There's so much utility here. There's so many different things you could do, and Ting Yun is one of the best utility characters, that you have all of this versatility. Depending on any situation you could potentially be in, you could just buff Clara or Aventurine. His damage is noteworthy in these type of modes. And giving Aventurine the ultimate instead of Clara is not always a bad choice either. Rather than have to use his skill to potentially restack those shields if it's absolutely necessary, you could end up giving Aventurine the ult. Let him ult, he ends up giving himself points of his fortified wager. This ends up re-triggering a bunch of stacks of shield, meaning he doesn't have to use the skill. He'll just get more shield, and he also gets the ult, so he gets to deal a ton of damage. It's absolutely broken. It is so fun. I love this team, and I can't wait to try out more compositions with Aventurine in Simulated Universe Golden Gears, and I implore you to try fun, interesting builds of your own. And again, if you are using a fun, interesting team build like this for this format, I heavily recommend that you do lean into the preservation blessings to some high degree. Not necessarily everything, of course. You want to get some elation, you want to get, maybe some erudition, because, his ultimate is a very powerful effect on a team like this. You want the preservation blessings in order to be able to build up his shield really strongly, and you want that quake damage, because don't forget that building up preservation is not just about survivability with this team comp. You get a ton of damage with the preservation blessings on this team composition. And again, because he's really amazing at stacking those shields and the survivability, that it gives you a lot of fun wiggle room for you to try out fun, interesting things of your own. Obviously, speed from the hunt, damage from the hunt, all sorts of great blessings that you wouldn't necessarily try if you were just running a cheese build. Again, This team composition, this Aventurine guy, this super duper, this tall glass of water on a hot summer day Aventurine, he doesn't have to rely on cheesing every single time you go into these modes because he's so powerful with those shields. He's so reliable at sustainability. It makes it a more fun and interesting way to be able to clear these modes that is more comfortable than it's ever been. And I do think that currently, Aventurine is the single strongest character for Golden Gears, Swarm Disaster, and Simulated Universe at this time. Anyways, if you found any of this informative or helpful in any way, shape, or form, or you just like Honkai Star Wars content in general, consider leaving a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.